Welcome to the Next Chapter Experience podcast with Jeanette Lissette. Thought leaders explore the mindset, wellness, and wealth needed to realize next level transformation. Let's get started. Welcome to the Next Chapter Experience. I'm your host, Jeanette Lissette. Today's guest is Darcy Luoma. Darcy, welcome to the Next Chapter Experience.
Thank you so much. It's just a pleasure to be with you.
I am so looking forward to our conversation today. I would like to start off with your book, okay, Thoughtfully Fit. And I have to tell you, I've read the book from cover to cover, and I've enjoyed every page of your book. What struck me initially at first, Darcy, was the focus on the core. And when most of us see the word fit, we associate it with being physically fit and working different parts of our body. But in your analysis, thoughtfully fit and working on our core in that focus of pause, think, and act.
That's right.
Okay, I remember the core piece. So let's rewind for a second and let's talk a little bit more about you. What's going on in your life?
I own a coaching consulting firm. Everything we do focuses on creating thoughtfully fit people and teams that are high performing, that are able to clear the hurdles that get in the way. Inevitably, we always have different challenges. And I'm still a triathlete. I'm in season 24. I've done 2 triathlons this season. I've got, I think, 2 or 3 more that I have coming up. I love the opportunity to be in a community, to be fit, to be social. It's really about that. It's not about placing or winning or performing in any way.
Yeah, I find it very fascinating and very inspiring. I am not trying to walk in your footsteps with the triathlons, okay? I am not trying to do that. In fact, I was walking this morning and I thought to myself, I said, walking is my jam.
Oh, and walking is so healthy. It's so good.
Yeah, walking is my jam. And I have had a lot of success with just adding walking to my program. Of course, I like doing Zumba. It's another thing I enjoy, and some cycling. But when I read all of the things that you've done as it relates to being physically fit, unbelievable. But before we get to that, let's rewind for a second. One of the things that actually intrigued me about your background was the work that you did with your U.S. Senator and working in the political space. And I'm fascinated by that because the days and times that we're in right now, there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. I spent the first 2 decades of my career in politics and campaigns, and I was on the front lines with angry constituents and lobbyists and protesters. And that's also part of what inspired me to want to launch my business, to write the book, to help people be thoughtfully fit, because I saw a lot of people not handling themselves thoughtfully, really myself included. When I started as a leader in the senator's office, I was not saying no. I wanted to prove myself, so I was saying yes to everything. So everything was watered down. I wasn't doing anything well. I wasn't leading well from my heart. There was so much that I had to learn, and that I watched as I was seeing different types of people and groups get triggered and not handle themselves, react poorly when blindsided, and not be able to have balanced relationships. And so that combination of my background in politics with my background in athletics, and realizing that, gosh, isn't it fascinating that when I train and practice for a race, it's easier and it's more fun. And that's what I found with my clients is when they come in with a problem, with a challenge, and they train and practice to engage their core and to pause instead of reacting when they're blindsided and get called out in a meeting, they can pause and think, how do I want to show up? What do I control here? What are my choices? And then act with that new awareness. The more you do it, the easier it gets. And so that's where that inspiration came from in the political field, combined with the athletics and the physically fit to do what I do now, which I love.
That's outstanding. As I read that, the pause, the think, and the act, it reminded me of a situation that I was in when I was in my corporate position, and it involved a leader who came to visit with me and my team and all of our students that we were training. And he came in with a certain type of energy, and I picked it. And then, of course, he indicated to me he needed or wanted some of my time. So I broke away from this meeting. We had a large group of over 50 people we were training at that time, but he came in with this energy and I could feel it. So we sat down and talked, and he was irritated about something that had happened. Now, he flew in from another state. So I can only imagine that all along his journey, he was thinking about whatever he was thinking about. By the time he arrived, he had a certain type of energy. So I let him go and rant and rave and all of this that he wanted to do. And when I did respond, he was very abrupt in how he handled me. So we ended our meeting. I went back in and facilitated and did all of that. And then I slept on it. And I said to myself, this is not over. I'm going to talk to him tomorrow. And I did talk to him the very next day, and I calmly had him revisit how he communicated with me and how I felt about that. And I felt confident in that moment that I could tell him, this is what you brought to me, and this is how it was received. I'm going to play it back for you to revisit it and then come to your own conclusion. He ended up apologizing, but this is the most amazing thing. 2 years later, we were having lunch and he replayed it again, and it was a completely different view of the situation. And we laughed about it. He said, you gave it to me, Jeanette. You gave it to me. I said, oh, if I had given it to you, you would have really known in that moment. You didn't receive half of what I was thinking about. But the point being is, though, I had enough wherewithal to understand that I was not going to get my message across to him with all the energy that he was bringing. I just let him have his time and then revisited the next day.
What a fabulous example of you engaging your core. So in that moment, when he gave you a piece of his mind, you could have reacted, you could have gone at it, and it could have escalated. And 2 years later, you wouldn't have been laughing about it. 2 years later, right? You might have burned a bridge. Instead, you hit the pause button. You took some time to think, to sleep on it, to get a perspective, and then went back and acted thoughtfully, no less. Because you have to do all 3 steps. For you to hit the pause button and give some space and to think, beautiful. The piece that you did in particular, that especially with the female clients that I coach, that is sometimes harder, is the acting, is going back to have the conversation and say, hey, can we revisit that? Instead of silently stewing or convincing yourself it'll get better on its own.
Needless to say, I've had my experiences. But what fascinated me about your walk, and probably more so because of what we've been challenged with over the last 2 years here in the United States as it relates to politics. I'm like, Darcy, they need you. Oh. They need you, because it seems like anymore, I don't know if it's reality shows, but it seems like individuals or people feel like it is their right to act out and to say whatever it is on their mind at whatever moment, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah. And this is so interesting because one of my role models, the US Senator that I worked for, he's the epitome of thoughtfully fit. And we were at an event, downtown Madison, campaign event, and he got introduced. He was just about to go up, and a group of protesters took over the podium and they started, Senator, you did blah, blah. And so the staff people that were there, we were looking at him and ready to go and get them off. And he's no, just let it be. And he sat there and he listened to them. And eventually they lost steam. And so he waited until they were done. And then he went up and took the stage and he started talking and they started yelling. He said, respectfully, I listened to your concerns. And now I would just love to ask for the same respect that you listen to my comments now. And he was so calm and thoughtful, and he didn't overreact. He didn't add fuel to the fire. That level of statesmanship is really, I think, what's needed more and more today in politics.
It's interesting because I do believe that we have someone in office right now, President Biden, who I believe most of the time is a statesman, where he's seemingly able to keep a balance. Now, this is the thing that I've noticed, that there are many people who feel he is weak because he doesn't run off at the mouth and explode with all of this bluster and self-importance and all of that we have seen in a prior administration. I'm not trying to get political here, but the reality is just the reality, okay? So sometimes it can be taken as a weakness. I don't see it as a weakness, but some people do get it as a weakness.
And from my view and my seat, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, if we can get to a place where we can stay engaged in healthy, respectful, passionate debate, we're going to get better outcomes. And I think, sadly, the negative ads and the vitriol, that sparks emotions, and it works.
It does.
In one way, it works. I don't think it works in terms of getting necessarily the best policies and then the best debate. Yeah.
What you said. In fact, I texted my best friend, Jackie, and I was telling her that you were going to be a guest on the show. So I was telling her that you and I were going to have a conversation, and I told her your background, that you had worked in the political space and worked for former governor and the advanced teams and all this kind of stuff. And I said, I don't know if I'll be able to keep away from getting political, Jackie. I'm going to try, but it went down that road, so that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But now that you're in the coaching and consulting space, do you work mostly with corporate clients, or do you also work with entrepreneurs?
Yes, we work with both. And as a matter of fact, I've got 7 coaches on my team. And some of the coaches also are life coaches. And so they're working with stay-at-home parents or a nonprofit, all sorts of educators. But the prime place that I'd say the majority of our business is in organizations and doing individual and team coaching, and then also the training and consulting.
Exactly. So why don't we, for the benefit of our listeners, talk a little bit about the coaching space and the life coaching space, because many times folks just don't really have a grasp of what it is and the value that it has in terms of the actual client. So can you speak to coaching or life coaching?
Yeah. So I'll start with, Jeanette, what's oftentimes a misperception is somebody hears, oh, you're a coach. They think that I'm going to come in and give you advice and tell you what to do, similar to an athletic coach. That's very different. So a coach primarily is there to get really clear on what's your vision, what does success look like. Whenever I'm working with a new client, we identify what are the primary focus areas. So at the end of the coaching, we can measure, have we been successful? Did you meet your goals? And then in the coaching, the client, so if I'm coaching you, Jeanette, and you come in, I'm holding you as the expert. You know what success looks like. You know what's getting in the way. You know where you get triggered. You know what the gaps are. I can't give you advice, because if I did, it's advice based on what my challenges and gaps in success looks like. And so with coaching, you're the expert, and I'm asking powerful questions. I'm holding up the mirror. I'm pointing out blind spots to help you get new awareness. And then it's all about, okay, with that new awareness, what are you going to do between now and our next session in 2 weeks? So it's bite-sized pieces of action and then accountability. That's very different from oftentimes when I'm going to an organization, they say, we have a coaching culture. Really what they have are mentors. I'm a huge fan of mentoring. It's very important. I have had mentors. I have been a mentor. But if I'm mentoring you, Jeanette, I'm the expert. Let me share with you what I've learned. And if you want that job, let me take you to this event and introduce you to these people. Let me update your resume with you. I'm the expert. Very valuable. It's different from coaching. And then the last thing I'll share, just because you asked about coaching, I'll take it from the high level for a moment, is sometimes people say, how is that different from having a therapist? Therapy looks at it through the lens of the past and history. And what do you need to do to heal and recover from in order to get to a functional life? And I'm overly simplifying it. Therapy is so much more. Coaching doesn't go to the past. It says, who are you today and who do you want to be in the future to have a fulfilled life? The other distinction, I'll say with coaching, I'm assuming that you are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. With therapy, that may not be. You may have bipolar, you may have depression, you may have anxiety, you may have PTSD. There's all sorts of things that a therapist is trained to do that would not be appropriate in coaching. Is that too much?
No, that was perfect. That was perfect, because again, I think that there's a little bit of not really mystery, but it's just unclear as to the difference, and many people don't see the value of having a coach and or a life coach. This is another thing though. There's a lot of, and I thought about this the other day when I was talking to my assistant, and we are talking about the whole coaching piece, and you are a master certified coach, but there's a lot of folks out there who are coaching who are just coaching, and there are a lot of voices, and there are a lot of, I call it just really pollution. There's just so much, so many people just talking about what they think they can do for other people. When I look at the credentials, some have, some don't, and things of that nature. I'm not certified to be a coach. So let's go down that road real quick so that we can get some additional clarity on that. So you're a master certified coach. What does that mean?
That means I did 2,500 hours of coaching. I had to submit recordings with other master coaches to listen to. It was the most rigorous process. I went through multiple levels to get there. You have associate, then you have professional, right? Multiple levels to get to mastery. There's a 96% failure rate in the world, and there's only 3.8% of coaches, last I looked, which is about a year ago, of coaches in the world have that designation, because it's really hard to not jump in and fix and solve and teach and give advice. And that is not coaching. The reality is anybody tomorrow could put up a website and say they're a coach. There is no bar to entry. And sadly, that means that, there's a full range out there of expertise on being really effective in being able to help somebody move the needle on what they want in life.
So it's important to check the background of the individual. When I looked at your profile and your biography of who you are and all of the hours and hours that you have spent getting certified and becoming educated on how best to serve others, it's very evident in in your book, Thoughtfully Fit, that you have applied those things that you've learned. And without doing that, you would not have obviously had the success that you've had.
100%.
Yeah.
When I first started coaching, I didn't have a credential. I didn't have a certification. I just was like, I want to coach. And I did the same thing that many other people did. I put my shingle out there and I was good. It wasn't until I got trained and certified and credentialed that I became masterful. My clients weren't getting the results. I was good, but I was not great. I would not have the business I have today had I not invested my own skill set to become masterful. And so I just challenge people, if you are looking for a coach, there are tons and tons of credentialed coaches. Just look at the International Coach Federation. There's a coach finder you can look on there. That just shows that the people who have gotten that designation have gone through the rigorous training and certification, not to mention the ethics, to be able to be a coach, a professional coach.
I really was drawn to many chapters of your book. And as I mentioned, I've read the entire book. As you break down the core and what's important in terms of the pause, in terms of just taking a time to just breathe, just let it settle for a moment. Can we talk a little bit about the pause and thinking and taking the action?
The pause is the first step of the core. And the pause is essential because it's what kicks you off of autopilot. You clearly are phenomenal at pausing, that you didn't react in that moment to that executive who was giving you a piece of his mind. You took the time to pause. The pause is what sets you up to be able to think. And so I want you to think about the pause like a stop sign. If you're driving along and you want to get to Target on the other side of town, you get to a stop sign, you don't stop and take out your lunch and your laptop and start replying to emails. You just stop and raise your awareness and then proceed. And so that pause might be a breath. It might be counting to 3. It might be, as you did, let me sleep on this. It's what is essential to be able to give you access to making a conscious choice instead of an unconscious reaction in the moment.
One of the things I try to be aware of, and you talk a lot about self-awareness as well in your book, is to be aware in that moment as to what's happening so that I don't respond with a knee-jerk response or some default that's been triggered. So I'm not perfect. There's times when I can jump off like that, and other times when I'm so aware of the situation and also what I might have at stake should I just pop off. That's the other thing, because I don't know why I've been in these situations where could have gone left or could have gone. And I sometimes think to myself, this might be self-serving. What do I have to lose? Or what do I have to gain by doing that? And what would be on the loss side?
Yes. Beautiful. And that's a perspective. That's the pause gives you a chance to think. Those are some fabulous questions you can ask and to think. Okay, if I proceed this way, what do I have to gain? What do I have to lose? You can try on different perspectives and anticipate what it looks like. And oh, actually, there's a lot to lose. If I give him a piece of my mind right now, I might leave feeling better, but the relationship might be damaged, and who knows where that goes. Beautiful, powerful questions to ask yourself and to think.
Now let's talk a little bit about the act piece, because you talk a lot about the fullness in the act as you're looking at all angles and how it's going to impact or influence outcomes and things like that.
So here's what I'd like to share with your listeners and your fans is that each of us have a default. One of these that we're most comfortable with, that's most natural. So some people who are pausers, they're really good at taking that beat.
Right.
But our things taken to extreme become a weakness. That pause might turn into a 5-hour Netflix binge and avoidance. Right. There's some who are really good at thinking. You're able to ask yourself those critical questions, but maybe you get stuck in the thinking and it becomes analysis paralysis. And then you're silently stewing, but never pulling the trigger. And then some are really good at acting. Something happens and they get stuff done. They're going to immediately move the ball forward, but it may be impulsive. It may be overreacting, and maybe you have to clean up the mess. So the key is to do all 3 in order. So they're the people who are really good at pausing or thinking, though that's a huge strength, but you still have to act. You can't just spiral and think and stew on that conversation you want to have with that person that really offended you. At some point, you need to go and have the conversation. You need to act. And then that's where the wash, rinse, repeat comes, because then you can pause again and think, how did that go? Did I get the results I wanted? Is there something else that I want to do as a follow-up? Maybe I send a thank you note or a follow-up email or some other act to reinforce it.
One of the things that you brought out about that I really love in this process, this dynamic, is really thinking about what you have control of in the moment.
Yeah.
And I love that because it makes so much common sense.
Why waste energy? So if you could think of the other people that way, you can't change them. And wasting energy being angry, they're not the way you think they should be, or trying to worse change them to be the way. Just this morning, Jeanette, I had somebody email me. I won't tell the long version, but the short version of the story was this gentleman, colleague, and we decided that we wanted to move forward on this event that we had done in the past. And he emailed and said, hey, if you could send me the list of all the participants, then I'll move it forward. He has the list of participants. And so in that moment, my first thought was like, what a jerk. What, am I not your secretary? Why do I have to find the list? You have the list. Pause. Think, okay, I could react. I could put him under the table. I could write, or I could just open my email, copy, paste, hit send, and choose to let it go. And then that's what I chose because I don't control him. Now, if this were to become a pattern, and in the thoughtfully fit model, that's the practice of flexibility, stretching to accept others as they are, choosing to focus on what you can control. If this were to become a pattern, and if I worked with him and I regularly noticed, wait a minute, you're treating me like I'm not going to get your coffee. No, then I would have stepped into balance, which balance is being able to balance what do you want and need with what I want and need. Hey, so I'm just noticing a dynamic and a pattern in our relationship that I want to get curious about and see what you think. Every time there's something to do where there's any kind of administrative, I've noticed that it comes to me. I'm starting to make up that's because I'm a female and I'm not liking it. I don't know. What's your perspective? How can we design this moving forward? Because I'm starting to notice I'm getting resentful and I really like you. I don't get resentful. I want to keep working with you.
Probably he just needs to organize himself so he has information he can put his hands on it's called organization. Here's a quote that I wrote down from you, and it's very simple, and I love this. While you don't control what happens, you control what happens next, always.
That's right. How you respond that's what happens next.
Absolutely. I don't know what you call the planogram that you have.
So thoughtfully fit, that's the model.
The model, okay.
And we often will talk about it as a philosophy. It's a philosophy.
Right.
How are you living your life? Are you being thoughtfully fit in how you're living your life?
So in the thoughtfully fit model, it's seemingly on the outside is broken down by internal and external. But we talked about the core being the PTA. There you go. The pause, think, and act. But on the internal side, there's the stillness, strength, and endurance. Can you talk a little bit about that internal piece?
Yeah. So what we found in our research I started to notice after coaching thousands and thousands of hours that people have the same challenges, the same hurdles. Came down to top 6. This is after lots of deep dive research. 3 of the hurdles are internal, where we get in our own way, and 3 of them are external, where we have challenges with other people. So those internal challenges, stillness is about being able to quiet the mind. Just if you want to be a peak athlete, you have to take rest days. You would never lift upper body 2 days in a row. You would never train for a marathon running 20 miles 2 days in a row. Your body builds stronger on the recovery days. In the same way, to be thoughtfully fit, you have to create some stillness and some opportunity to quiet the mind. We often get in our own way by not setting boundaries, not saying no, by over-functioning. And so that's why that's an internal one. Let me pause and see if you want me to go through the other 2 or if you want to comment on that one first.
No, we talked about the stillness and the pause and relating it to that pause piece. And the next piece of that is the strength piece. And I noticed that pause is in that piece as well.
Yeah. So these 6 challenges show up. No matter what your hurdle is, no matter where you get stuck, you can always go back to the core. And that's why it is the core. Just if you want to be a basketball player or a rower, or you want to just be able to take your dog for a walk, you have a strong core, every other movement's easier. In the same way, no matter what your challenges are, if you always can just go back to the core, pause, think, act. Doesn't matter which of these 6 challenges you're dealing with. So the second one, strength, is being able to consciously choose how you show up. And this one, what I started to notice is that people weren't always handling themselves the way they wanted to, weren't always able to self-manage getting that email and not being like, what in that meeting? That's strength. And it's a heavy lift. If you are annoyed, you walk in after a long day and you're tripping over your kids' shoes and that first feeling of negativity, if that's what comes out, that's going to have an impact. So strength is being able to consciously choose how you show up. And it's consciously choosing. We have thoughts. We have negative thoughts. Negative stuff happens. We have challenges. You're not going to control that people do things that annoy you. And you're not going to control your thoughts that, oh, what an idiot or what a jerk. That's normal. So with the thoughtfully fit model, the key is to pause and think, to raise awareness of, oh, I'm anxious, I'm angry, I'm frustrated. Is this thought right now serving me or sabotaging me? If it is sabotaging you, don't act on it. It's going to make it worse.
You know what's interesting about what you just said, though, and I'm thinking about this, is that it's not about the kitchen not being tidy, because I figured that out. It's really not about that. It's about something else. Generally speaking, it would be about something else. Appreciation, acknowledgement, support.
It's so often not about what's right in front of us. You want me to share the third internal?
Yes, please. Yes.
So this one is clients saying I get stuck in a project they don't know how to move forward, stuck in a relationship that's not working. That relates to the practice and thoughtfully fit of endurance, which is about being able to overcome those obstacles. It's about embracing a growth mindset to say, I can figure this out. I can move it forward instead of stalling out, instead of quitting altogether, instead of being stuck in a fixed mindset that says, oh, I'm not a good writer. I can't do that. I'm not a runner. I can't do math. I'm not a public speaker. And then you don't even embrace the growth mindset to be able to do the work to get unstuck.
I know that in the corporate environment and in organizations, for a while, it was very popular to talk about having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And I would listen to all of this rhetoric, but then make my observations. And it's a long, hard, bumpy road to encourage or influence people to actually make change.
Yeah.
It just is sometimes very difficult, especially large organizations.
It's very difficult. And that's why when I'm working with a team or an individual or an executive, the place we always start is right here. Instead of they need to, and this isn't that, just, okay, what's your role? How can you show up? What impact can you make? What do you control?
In your book, you talk about the CEO who would go into the meetings and be shooting down one's ideas, and he just would come in a little negative and such. And then he was concerned that his employees weren't being upfront with him, or they weren't being transparent or sharing it. I'm glad you helped him.
I love what I do. I love being able to help people, because here's the deal. That CEO, it wasn't like he was a bad person or that he wanted to create that environment. He was just doing what he did best, which is what he learned in his environment. It was his DNA. So most of the time, people aren't trying to be jerks. They aren't trying to make life hard for you. They just have blind spots. And so when you're thoughtfully fit, and this is why, to your point earlier, Jeanette, about people saying, I don't need a coach, or what's the value of a coach? You're right. You don't. Nobody needs a coach. The value of a coach is helping you to see those blind spots and giving you the support. Just like I think there's no Olympic athlete who is going to be getting a medal on the stand without having a coach. Could Michael Phelps be a phenomenal swimmer with a coach? Of course, look at him. But a coach is going to help you go farther, faster. And so that's what I was able to do with that CEO, is not make him wrong, not criticize him, just help him raise awareness.
Raise awareness.
When somebody says something and I shut it down, it's because my mind is already thinking of all the reasons it can't be done. He said, I'm not thinking about the impact it's having on that person in front of me.
It's interesting because I would always have a sense of humor about it, because I don't care what position you're in. We're all flawed individuals. And I would tell my team, I said, he's doing the best he can, with a certain expression on my face, and my team read that, right? Or she's doing the best she can. But as Maya Angelou says, when you know better, you do better.
Right. I'm guessing will probably know the story where Brene Brown talks. I don't believe they're doing the best they can because it's not good enough. And her husband said, whether they are or aren't, it's in your best interest to believe that they really are doing the best they can. That's going to help you move forward. And I just love that story, because it might not feel like people are doing the best they can.
But if that's all they got, it's all they got.
That's it.
Now, here's a travesty. Here's a CEO. Don't even know him, talking about him. But anyway, here's a CEO who's a CEO who doesn't have the skill sets. Now, if anything trips me up, that is one of them. But that's why I say you got to have a sense of humor.
That's right. I love it. You got it.
You gotta have a sense of humor. So let's now move to the external.
Yeah. So external. Yep.
Yeah.
So first one is flexibility. Flexibility is being able to stretch to accept others just as they are and just say, that is how that person is, and not waste your energy trying to change them or fix them or get them to be the way you think they should be.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Reminds me of a time in my professional life where I was put into a management position. And at the time, I was coming out of an entrepreneurial position within the company. Okay? And I was invited to join the leadership team, which I did. And I didn't have a lot of experience managing large groups of people. So my company sent me to the Center for Creative Leadership in San Diego.
Yes.
And at first, when I got the invitation and I did my research, I felt like they were sending me there because there was something that wasn't quite right with me. Okay. And my VP at the time assured me, said, Jeanette, we are investing in your development, because I shared with him, I said, why am I going to this place? And he said, we're investing in your development as a leader. So I went, and part of the process was to have a 360 feedback survey done. And it was done. And of course, the results were in, and they gave me the outlook of what my team felt about my leadership, if you will. And it wasn't as positive as I thought it was going to be. One of the observations they made and talk about flexibility was, when I would walk in the office in the mornings, the way it was set up, there was two ways to get into the office, the back door or the front door. I would actually walk to the front door, down the hall, and just go into my office. My team felt like I was avoiding contact with them, because if I had gone through the back door, I would have walked through the office and I could have said hello or good morning to everyone along the way. I had no idea. That meant so much to them.
Yes, that's incredible. And it's such a simple example and such a powerful example.
It made me feel very bad. In fact, I cried the whole 4 or 5 days I was there, because I was so impacted by that. So when I returned to my office and my team, we had this joke that they were going to roll in with chocolate and hook me up to it. I'd be all sweet and just cherry and all of this, but that was not my nature. My nature was so focused on the day, my plan for the day, my appointments for the day, my meetings for the day. And I wasn't thinking about what my responsibility to them was and what they needed from me. I would have loved them have had a little bit more flexibility and understanding me, but I flipped it around and I just opened it up for a very honest and authentic discussion of what their needs were. That was the way I handled it.
And so I'd love to just bottom line, a takeaway, if I can, for people who are listening, and give a really concrete tool at this moment, because I'm guessing a lot of people are like, yes, that's me, I'm misunderstood. And so if you are on a team, whether it's at work or you're an entrepreneur and you have subcontractors, or you're on the little league and you got coaches, right? Take some time to design your team alliance. And so that's all about making the invisible visible. That was invisible to you. You did not know that they were having these thoughts. And so if you can, whether it's on the front end or if you didn't do it at the beginning, you can do it at any time. Say, hey, I want to talk through and have you all think about 3 questions. I want to talk through these 3 questions. 1, what's the culture or the atmosphere that we want to have on this team in this environment? And that's from a systems lens, right? Do we want it to feel lighthearted? Do we want it to feel intense? Do we want it to feel supportive? Whatever that might be. You're going to get a lot of information. Number 2, what do you need personally to flourish on this team? And that's where people can say, when I did this, when I worked in the senator's office, I was the leader of the office. And I said, one of the things I need is I don't have a good memory. And so I need to have things written down and have them documented so that when I forget, I can go back and be like, oh, that's right. That's what we decided. And so I take lots of meeting notes and minutes and recaps. At that moment, Jeanette, I had 2 people say, oh, I thought you just didn't trust me because you're always sending out this, right? And then the other person said, I thought you just didn't like me because instead of popping down 10 feet down the door to connect, you're sending me emails all the time, which felt so cold. And I'm like, oh, it's just because I want to have the answer in writing so I can go back and look it up. So that will give you an opportunity to start to understand people's personal user manuals. You'd like to get into work and get focused. You don't want to be chit-chatting and taking the back door. That doesn't mean you don't like the team. 3rd question, how do we want to be together when things get difficult? Because there will be storms. You're going to let me down. I'm going to say something that offends you and I have no idea it offends you. You're going to miss a deadline that's going to put me in a tizzy. We're human. We're flawed, as you said. So if we could design on the front end now how we want to be together when we've let each other down, when there's conflict, when there's challenges, then when that happens, we know how to proceed.
That's good stuff right there. I hope everybody listening is writing down these gems from Darcy Luoma. Okay, so that's the flexibility piece.
And then, so balance, we talked about earlier, that's being able to achieve alignment in your relationship, find the win, balance. What do you want and need with what I want and need?
And the agility piece.
And then agility is being able to respond effectively when you're blindsided instead of reacting on autopilot. He calls you out in that meeting instead of, we all have a default, and you get called out. Your default might be to like fight back. Your default might be to stonewall, to shut down, to cry. Agility is about being able to respond thoughtfully in that moment. Have the agility to be able to self-manage what that first initial reaction might be.
Absolutely. So as you think about your path, your plan for the year, I know you do a lot of speaking to organizations, lots of facilitating. You've got this huge team. What's in view?
We have boldly undertook an initiative that's been in the works for a while, and we just launched our Thoughtfully Fit Gym. So that's an online place for people to go. If they're like, okay, you can go to the gym and get support, what a physical gym, right? And get training and expert and coaches and community and accountability. The Thoughtfully Fit Gym is a place you can go to work out your mind, to be able to get support and community for being able to set boundaries, to be able to say no, to be able to handle yourself thoughtfully, to create more stillness in your life, to learn how to accept others that annoy the heck out of you. We are in the process. We just developed it. We are working on getting the word out about it because it's a hard concept to really be able to understand and embrace.
It makes a lot of sense, though, as you shared that. It makes a lot of sense because we do spend a lot of time as well as money. I know there's a statistic in your book that most Americans spend more money on fitness than they do on education.
That's right.
Something to that effect. And to have a thoughtfully fit, I would say, mental or mindset gym, if you will, makes a lot of sense to me for some reason.
Thank you. It makes sense to us too. And also just the fact that we want to make this as accessible as possible to people, and hiring a coach is expensive. Hiring a consultant, bringing somebody in to do training in your team. So that the gym we're looking at as a model for real-time learning in the moment. Somebody can log in to live workouts, or there's a whole on-demand video section as well. So you can get a workout in on your own. That we're trying to make it more accessible.
The self-education revolution is definitely in progress right now. Ever since COVID and us having to take a different path as to how we work and how we learn, I think we've learned a lot. And now I think there's more of a focus on self-education. However, to have a hub or ecosystem that's created where individuals can go and get the support that they need seems to be very timely.
Yes, thank you. I'll tell you what, pre-COVID, we would never have thought, let's create a virtual gym where people can, it wouldn't have that. We just thought we had to do everything in person. And so that's one of the silver linings with this. It's a revolution that is happening in real time on how people communicate and interact. And it's created a lot more flexibility.
And definitely more time spent in personal development. Yeah. You make mention many times in your book about Stephen Covey and some of his teachings and others. I'll tell you what, I was just mesmerized by the community that's been around you. The village that you have had around you for these years is pretty incredible.
Oh, thank you. It is incredible. And I love learning what's in Thoughtfully Fit. There is nothing new. It's all what I have learned from Jim Collins, Good to Great, Stephen Covey, 7 Habits, from Seth Godin, from all of those who have gone before. It's just a way to package it that hope is accessible to people.
Now you have a website, and we'll make that website available in the show notes, but if you'd like to share, that'd be great.
Yeah, so our website is darcyluoma.com. That goes through all of our services and coaching and consulting. It's got free blogs and videos. Also, we'll just share with people that if you go to thoughtfullyfit.com, there's a free quiz. And that quiz you can take, it's 2 or 3 minutes. It'll tell you which of these 6 hurdles is your biggest. And then it'll give you some strategies that you can use immediately to start training and practicing to overcome them. They're the same strategies that are in the book, same ones that I use with my coaching clients.
Very good. I have thoroughly enjoyed this this conversation. We can probably go on and on because there's a lot of intersections here where I think that we agree on a lot of things. Not to say that we have to, but I'm just saying it makes the conversation go very well. Again, I certainly appreciate you giving me this time and sharing your information with our listeners. I know it's going to be very valuable to anyone listening. So again, I greatly appreciate it.
Jeanette, thank you. And I'll say thank you. You are a phenomenal hostess. You did your homework. This conversation was so deep because you came prepared, and that is not lost on me. I'm so grateful. I love this conversation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.